السلام عليكم، مرحبا بكم بودكاست جديد، ايبيزود جديده معكم نجيب. اليوم كيف كيما لا ديرنيير فوا نسيو نجيب لكم دي كرياتور من بارتو من المون، نسيو نحكوا على لي كرياسيون تاعهم. اليوم انفيتي سبيسيال راح يحكي لنا على واحد لا سيري اللي انا بيرسونيلمون كبرت نتفرج فيها، اللي هو اسمها غالاتيك فوتبول، لي لا جينيراسيون تاعي كامل تشفاو عليها. دونك اليوم راهو معنا جيفري باش يحكي لنا على الافونت نتاعو كيفاش كان في هاد لا سيري، نحكوا شويه على هاد الامور وثم نكملوا البودكاست. حاجه في كيف فوالا. هاي جيفري، how are you?
Very well, thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you. It's a pleasure to have you here today. I'm excited to dive into the world of Galactic football and learn more about your involvement in the show.
Sure, with great pleasure. What would you like to know?
To kick things off, could you provide our audience with a brief overview on Galactic Football and how you become a part of this exciting project?
Well, Galactic Football had already one season um, run by Laurent Turner. He was the showrunner and the story editor for that, and it was very popular. And I had worked on another series for Jetix, which became Disney, called Oban Star Racers. And so Alphanim, who produced it in Paris, asked me to be the story editor for the second season. And I agreed. And I didn't know anything about galactic football, and I didn't know anything about soccer. I had to learn everything, which was a lot of fun, actually. So I watched the whole first season, and I took elements I thought were very interesting. And I had to create a new team called the Xenons, that were sort of lizard creatures, and two players for the Snow Kids, Mark and Yuki. I created those. And I wrote first a big grid and an 86-page story arc. I was crazy, and I wrote 15 episodes and co-wrote 11 episodes. So
Mm.
I manicured the season.
Perfect.
And
So I think the idea was the idea of the whole show was to create that unique fusion between science fiction and sport. You told me that you joined the team on the second season, but for you, what do you think inspired the concept of blending the science fiction and sports, particularly football, on this show?
well, I think it was an interesting visually for animation. Because you can go anywhere with animation, inside things or out into outer space. The motion capture was very interesting in that show because we had actual team players from the France team, wearing mudcap and doing the things that was captured and then placed on the characters. So that was very exciting. And but the idea itself, it's true. It was something that they came up with that was unique for the time. But they also knew that football is popular all over the world. Soccer, as we say in America.
Mhm. Yeah, soccer. Were there any particular animated or science fiction that served as inspiration for you for the second season?
Not particularly. I mean, the I just wanted to preserve the integrity of the first season, um, and build on that, which is tricky when you have something that's very popular and then you have to come. You're the second season. It's a lot of pressure, but it worked out very well because the components are there, the play between the characters themselves, the intrigue between the teenagers, the alien creatures. It was just everything was there.
Actually, that's an interesting topic. Was it easy to work on top of another creative work, or was it easy for you?
Once I watched it and took notes and thought, okay, now I know what I want to do. And then I spent a few months writing the story arc, for 13 and a half hours of cartoon. And working on a sequential series is a lot of fun because you're like a clockmaker. You know, you can plan something in this episode, and 4 episodes later, you know, it pays off. And it's the most fun to work on those kind of series where you have every episode is connected. And then you have the teams, you have all the scoring to keep track of, and you know, it was it was a lot of balls to throw in the air. But I didn't feel um, uh, you know, pressured by the first season. I thought it was a wonderful season, and I would take the good things and try to make it better.
Besides the rules of football and the mock-up emotion made by players, were there any specific or particular animated or any specific real world football elements that influences the game dynamics in this series?
Well, I think I was probably watching the World Cup at one point during that, working on it. And certainly techniques I try to use that would reflect with the reality of the game. You know, we had an underground game as well that was just 2 players, so it was sort of not, you know, the usual football in that particular season called Netherball. But uh, yeah, I mean, other than that, other than just watching soccer and trying to pick up things, and remember, I was really a novice to the sport, so literally everything was new for me.
How you as an American, how Americans see football as a sport?
I think it's just beginning to be understandable for Americans because we grew up with, you know, as kids, we grew up playing baseball and basketball and football. But I'm thin, I was never playing football. I played basketball. But also, we played kind of kickball that was basically soccer, but with no rules. So it was really, you know, kids killing each other with a ball on the field. But I think now it's becoming understood. I think also too the American team was always really bad, and so the country never got behind it. But now the women's soccer, American soccer, is like really great, and so is the men's. Yeah, it's becoming better.
With the Miami team, yeah, I actually watch a lot of
Yeah,
MLS matches right now. Let's go back on Galactic Football
right.
and to the creative aspects of the series. The series stands not only about the engaging narrative, but also its distinctive animation style. As a teenager
Yeah.
watching the series, I was blown away by this animation style by each episode. Actually, I watched it dubbed in Arabic, by the way. Were
Yeah.
there what elements of Galactic Football are you proud or most proud of, and why?
I guess making it real for teenagers, because teenagers are pretty discerning, and you know, they're going to kind of watch a show like this. So you know, we tried to make I mean, for me, I tried to make the teasing in between the players and the boy girl relationships and things, you know, real. And the kind of, there was celebrity things going on. They're doing commercials, and you know, the two of them, and things like that. In terms of animation, it was unusual because we had 2D animation and 3D animation, which sometimes kind of was jarring to watch. But kids weren't bothered by that at all, and teenagers, they were just following the characters. So for me, making the characters as real as possible, the kind of danger that we have with the pirates and the kind of bad guy Blaylock, making that as real as possible and not cartoony, and just telling a very real story. You know, the guys having flashbacks and bad dreams and all like that. So there's a lot going on.
As we know, like cinema or television or any artistic work is there is a lot of teamwork. What was the experience like collaborating with all the writers and the creators of the show?
Yeah, and animation is completely collaborative. You know, you write something and it might not look what you wrote sometimes on screen. When you see the animatic, you're like, okay, because the storyboarders have an idea and they implement it, and the director does his thing, and it's always something different, not exactly the way you dreamed it. With Galactic Football, as it was such a big deal because the first season was popular and a lot of light was on the series, we had a number of meetings and I had to sort of distill everyone's ideas into something that I liked and I could use. Um, and I took two of the writers from the first season that I really liked, and we worked together writing the script, the series itself. But it was super collaborative, and even the first season, was really created by kind of like 15 writers. This sort of the writers collective they were called, and sort of four main writers, Charles Beret and Pascal Boulel, Flavian and Vincent Vendelli, I think were the creators. And everyone had their ideas, and everyone felt very close to those characters, and so that was, being the new guy on the second season was always kind of like, okay, let's not crash the boat. But I just kept it. I just focused on the characters for me, and what was real for them.
Let's go back in your past a little bit. What inspired you to go into or made a career in television writing in the beginning?
Well, I was an actor in New York on off Broadway at Circle Repertory Company when I was about 22, 3, 4. And I acted on off Broadway. I had good notices in the New Yorker and the Variety, but I didn't love acting. And but we had at Circle Rep we had readings, play readings every Wednesday, and so we had the people would read the plays with actors, and then you would have all the comments from the actors and the directors and other writers. And I thought, yeah, writing is what I should be doing. And so I went to NYU's Tisch School of the Arts at the dramatic writing program, and I studied writing for a number of years. And then I started working in film, developing film scripts for a company working for Miramax. And then I moved to Paris. So I was in between Paris and New York. And in Paris, I met a producer who wanted me to work with this American director named Jerry Schatzberg. So I'm still working in film. So I wrote a treatment for him. But then that producer invited me to La Femis. And La Femis is the big film school in Paris.
In Paris, yeah.
And exactly. And there I met a guy who was writing animation, another student, and he was working for what was called Gaumont Multimedia at the time. And it was a co-production with a New York company. And he goes, "Oh, do you want to write these cartoons with me? Do you want to try?" I said, "Okay." And so we would go for a walk and take notes, and we'd send in our pitches, and it worked. And I suddenly was writing animation. And I found it fantastic because you're really only limited by your imagination. That's it. I mean, because you can almost do anything with a budget. Yes, if it's 3D, it's expensive, and animation is expensive to do. But what you can do with it is amazing. So it's just fun. And lastly, the people. What kept me in animation was the people, the people, the designers and directors and the other writers. They're just really fun people to work with.
Before asking you the next question, did you witness the end of the show Galactic Football?
Did I witness the end of it?
The end
Did
of
I
it,
see
yeah.
did I see the third season, you mean? Or
Yeah, or were you involved in any way in the third season?
Okay. Well, yes, I co-wrote the story arc of the third season. And I wrote 9 episodes of the third season, but I didn't feel it wasn't my season. I was not the story editor. I was not the show. I was just and I don't feel close to that season because I didn't, pay attention to every beat the way I did the second season. And I think that people wanted it to go on. I mean, it was popular, but I think a number of things happened. Maybe the company that was doing the motion capture, was no longer in business. There's some outside things. I do know that now it's owned by Gaumont, and they would love to do another season. Who knows?
Actually, shows, especially in television, they find it hard to end the show. For you, what were the consideration and creative choices that shaped how the series came to an end?
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't even know if I can remember that. I can tell you for the second season, um, we left it, every time we tried to leave it a little bit open, and even in the first season, there were things that we left open that we did not follow. It just didn't work. And so at the end of second season, we left things open. And of course, I had destroyed the glass pitch that they play on by the scoreboard crashing through it, which was great to discover it was possible. I remember asking the people to test that, and they showed me a little test, and I thought, yeah, let's smash it. And it was fun to do in 3D. But for ending the third season, I can't recall. I really don't remember. As I said, I'm sort of distant from that season. I really expected it to go on, but things had changed with that company.
Speaking of a reboot or a remake, let's say, are you open of about that as someone who has contributed to the success of Galactic Football? Second question: what are thoughts on the current landscape of French animation or animation in general?
Oh, there's so much going on, and so many different things going on, and so many genres that still could be explored. I'm always surprised by things I'm seeing. French animation is unusually strong. I think mostly now they're moving towards feature films in France, but there's still plenty of series happening, which are international. That would be very cool, actually, a reboot. The way you say reboot makes me think all kinds of new things for Galactic Football, because even visually it could be stronger. I always felt the show should be tighter in its direction and even the writing, and to really make it fast. And I think that's also more modern, because now the shows, even the editing is sort of dated. I think editing now would be quicker. But the rebooting is a great idea. I hope somebody takes it up. I hope someone does it. No, I would be all for it. I wasn't one of the original creators. I was someone who built on something, but it was still precious to me. But I wouldn't feel married to the characters, and I think they're allowed to evolve. And it would be really fun to have a reboot.
Discussing with a lot of creators, directors, and writers, there is always a debate about a topic, which is there is less original ideas now in animation or cinema or television. What do you think about that?
I think there are perhaps less original ideas that are being made.
Yes,
The
I'm agree with
key,
that.
because it's a risk, it's money. And so too often in France and other countries, the producer will do something based on a book because the book was popular or the book exists. So if you come with something that doesn't exist, except in your head and now on paper, and you say, it's this series that I want to do, it's harder for them. So they don't often invest in that. They invest in franchises that exist because it's less of a risk. And there's the audience is already out there to go, oh, right, Garfield or whatever, and so, this kind of thing. I don't think it's over. I think there's room for plenty of innovation. I'm sure it's coming, and I'm sure more is coming. It does seem that most of that is happening in feature films and less in series. And you know, Galactic Football was kind of rare for its time because of the each episode was connected, but then that became very common with streaming and Netflix and things like that. But still, it's not so common in broadcast television. The
Speaking
broadcasters don't really show it in order. I don't know why.
speaking of television and SVOD platforms or Netflix or streaming, were there any difference that you see now as a viewer or as a writer? Were there any specific differences in writing or storytelling?
In animation, I guess.
Yes.
You know, mostly, I mean, everyone's going to say this, but you know, I think all the real trends come out of Japan. You know, they're
Yes.
still number one. They just are fearless with doing, you know, animation, and it's very inspiring. And American animation and French animation is, you know, in terms of storytelling, is still, I think, kind of far behind. But that's about risk and producers not wanting to risk the money. That's not popular. You can't sell it. There won't be an Arabic version of, you know, that cartoon because no one will buy it. And so as people begin to risk, innovation will change. Now, yes, there are. I mean, even in America and in France, there are more risks being taken, and some of the new shows are really interesting. I mean, there's things happening. I don't see a massive change though.
Jeffrey, thank you so much for sharing your experience with us today. Before we conclude, is there else you would like to share with the fans, a message you would like to share with the fans of Galactic Football?
Keep the faith. You know, who knows? There might be more. I don't know who will do it. Gaumont owns it, so you send your emails to Gaumont and say, "Hey, we want a fourth season of Galactic Football." And thank you for watching it. You know, it was a labor of love. Certainly, the season I worked on, the second season, I adored working on it, and those characters were all very real to me, and I'm glad it touched you when you were young.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey.